putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Kevin Jackson here. You ever heard Billy Graham preach? It's the Kevin Jackson Show, KJRadio.com, 844-551-8255. Write that number down. I'm going to ask you again, have you ever heard Billy Graham preach? Because most of the people who probably listen to my show have heard Billy Graham at one point or another. Most of the millennials, my producers, these guys, never heard Billy Graham preach. Know nothing of Billy Graham. And what I will tell you is when I was growing up, it was mandatory when Billy Graham came on TV that we watched it. My family was we grew up Baptist. Church was a chore. I mean, I hated to go to church, but I went. And I understood what it was about to some degree. I mean, I understood that, people would tell me, Kevin, there's something bigger than you. You got to understand that, and all that. And at some point it kicked in. I remember when I got baptized, my grandmother cried because, you have to volunteer to go get baptized. And I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I walked up and, I'm ready to give my life to Christ. Even though I wasn't, I didn't really know all that it meant. I just knew that I had to do it. It was my thing. And I would watch people go up. And one Sunday I just got up. I was like, because it was nervous. You're nervous to do that. But I just went up to the front and went, yep, time to get baptized. I think I was probably 7 or 8 now that I think about it, because I know the church. It was Mount Calvary Baptist Church, San Antonio, Texas. But I will tell you this, all the church I've ever had, nothing came close to watching Billy Graham. Required viewing at my home. My entire family would gather around the TV to hear this great man preach. And I remember the first time I saw him, I was like, why are we watching this white man? I don't get this. The Billy Graham Crusade. Big, all the music and the pageantry. And there's Billy Graham standing in front of thousands of people. I mean, I'm trying to have you just imagine this guy literally surrounded. I'm talking rock star status, man. I had never seen anything close. I watched, the films of, all these different rock bands playing in the outdoor concerts and all that stuff, and nothing compared. At the very least, Billy Graham had people just riveted, and they were at least the size of those audiences, if not larger. In most cases, they were larger. People as far as you could see, wherever he spoke. I don't remember where. I couldn't tell you the locations. I know this. Supposedly, Billy Graham has spoken to over 215 million people in 185 countries. That's a lot of countries. That's almost the entire world. And there we were, gathered around our TV as a family, and all you did was listen. You weren't allowed to talk. And here's what was really interesting. I'm a talker, and I didn't say anything. I just watched. And I watched as this man, he, with his timbre and his tempo, just captivated audiences. I can still see my grandfather shaking his head in approval as something Billy Graham said resonated inside of him. That kind of, yep, that's the way it is. And, Graham's talking about the state of the world, which, for the record, in comparison, was pretty lame. If he were talking today about the state of the world, Billy Graham would be blown away. Crowds, man, just, and I remember thinking, how could a preacher be speaking to this many people? I marveled at that. I mean, he wasn't playing an instrument. He wasn't up there gyrating sexually or anything. He was just up there speaking words. And I remember this one sermon where Graham explained the situation of a bad man's dying declaration. And Billy Graham said this, and that man uttered the most powerful words in the human language. And I remember going, what? He's about to tell me the most powerful words in the human language. I'm going to listen. And I waited. And Graham was a master at pausing for effect. And he finished with, and that man said to Jesus, what must I do to be saved? I remember thinking, there they were. The most powerful words in the human language. I must have been 10 years old, and I remember that statement as if it happened yesterday. What must I do to be saved? I've never forgotten those words and probably never would. And I didn't realize it at the time. But watching all those Billy Graham crusades, and my grandparents, there was not. We had the one TV. There was nothing else I could watch on TV, so I had to watch it. But what I found was that I wanted to watch it. It became. I can't describe it, but Billy Graham fortified my faith in God. It was a God. I was in a God-fearing family. We went to church. We did all those things, but it didn't resonate. The words of my various preachers, and this is no disrespect to them, but it didn't resonate the way Billy Graham made it resonate. Subliminally, I witnessed the power of God showing me that faith could be bigger than anything the secular world would offer me. I'll tell you guys right now, it's easy to be a sellout. Right now, I've told you guys this, and I've jokingly said it. If I were to go to the left, I'd be a multimillionaire, if not a billionaire, within a decade. I don't think God would let me live that long, because I'd be probably one of the most debaucherous people on the planet. The evil side of me, if it took over, would be bad. So, I choose to be on the side of righteousness, and I'm not always good. I say this all the time. I tell you guys, I'm a sinner. There are times when I disgust myself and, etc. That's the way sin works. And the same is true of you. There are people out there listening going, oh, okay, look at Kevin, he's a sinner. Yeah, right. So are you. So are you. You disgust yourselves. You are not worthy of the grace of God. But that's when God wants you. He wants you when you're soiled and when you're feeling low and all that, because that's when you're most vulnerable. So anyway, I listened to Billy Graham, and he changed my life. And now he's dead at the age of 99. Here's what they said. The Reverend Billy Graham, the charismatic North Carolina pastor who took his evangelizing crusades around the country and the globe, died on Wednesday morning. Graham served as a counselor or minister to dozens of U.S. presidents. He preached to an estimated 215 million people in 185 countries around the world during his life. His message reached millions more as he maintained a near constant presence on radio, television, and the internet. He wrote more than 24 books, including his 1997 memoir, Just As I Am, which was a New York Times bestseller. It's funny, he would title it Just As I Am. And he capitalized I am because he said, when God was asked, who are you? He said, I am. I remember that speech, that part of his crusade, his sermon, if you will, at the time. But imagine this, a pastor reaching 215 million people in 185 countries, no internet, no Snapchat, no Instagram, no text messaging, whatever, phones, smartphones and all that, just going around country to country. I will tell you, it's sad that the kids don't get to see Billy Graham in his prime speak today. In today's culture, quite frankly, it would be difficult to get people to listen to him. But if anybody could, it's Billy Graham in his prime. So you add up the Joel Osteens, the Creflo Dollars, and all these other evangelists into one, and they could not carry Graham's luggage. And I don't mean any disrespect to them. I met Joel Osteen not very long ago. He's a nice man, and I think he's really, truly, believes what he says. I believe he's genuine, but he's no Billy Graham. There isn't a Billy Graham. The world lost an icon when Billy Graham died. And sadly, too few people are going to get to see the eloquence of a man so committed to God. I feel like the Catholics, like we lost the Pope, the Christian Pope. As I said before, and I've said on this show many times, and many of you thank me for this, for admitting to being a Christ follower or a Christian, but also for being a sinner unworthy of the grace of God. That's who we are. But let me tell you something. I'm happy that I was witnessing God's hand work through Billy Graham. His impact on me is immeasurable. So I grieve with the Graham family for their loss. But here's where the hope of salvation comes in, where you know Billy Graham's in heaven. The family knows it. And I'm glad that Franklin Graham carries a torch for his father. And I hope and pray that Christians around the world will support his memory. But rest in peace, Billy Graham.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.